Happy you could come along. We are joined as always by Greg Engert, beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, a James Beard Award nominee. The group includes Vermilion in Old Town, Tallulah, and Eat Bar in Arlington. Greg, it is always good to see you.
Good to see you too.
What do we have on tap this week?
This week is a very special week for craft beer drinkers that can still find some of this around. Founders Brewing Company, Sweet Repute, a brand new beer from them, but a beer that makes perfect sense for Founders. It is a beer that is aged in bourbon barrels as well as aged in bourbon barrels that previously matured maple syrup and then blended together.
What, could we have some bacon too?
Yeah, exactly. 12.6% wheat wine at the end of it, and this is part of their backstage series. They started this up a couple years ago. This is the 8th release from that series. They come out like two, 3, 4 times a year. The original release in the series was a beer that they were very well known for already, which is called Canadian Breakfast Stout. So what happens is every so often they release a very limited run of 750 milliliter bottles, just a handful of kegs out there of something incredibly special and rare, and Sweet Repute is the next one in that. So for this beer, what they did was they brewed a wheat wine. So when you hear wheat wine, what you think is basically a rich, malty, strong ale, like a barley wine, but produced with a good amount of wheat. The wheat will give it a kind of pale goldenish hue, lighten it up, give it some sweetness, some grainy qualities, kind of graham crackery notes as well. They then take that beer and age it in a number of straight up bourbon barrels that have only held bourbon, and then barrels that have held both bourbon and then maple syrup.
Wow. After
the 16-month maturation period, they blended the batch together and came up with this 12.6% amazing sipping beer.
Sipping is the hard part. Ooh. Oh, my goodness. That's dangerously creamy.
Oh,
that is, ooh.
That's
boy,
good,
and
huh?
the nice little finish there with the bourbon. Hello. Wow, what a great way to say so long 2013 and hello 2014. Very good for our final beer of the year.
Wow. It's just amazing. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's just one of those beers. It's so good that it's got to be tasted. You got to go out and find it. One thing you say about it is it has a little bit of heat in the finish just because of all that bourbon from the barrels and things like that. But this is a great beer to sip now, but also to lay down. Obviously, you know, it's going to just mellow out, get smoother and creamier, but it's great now as well. One of the coolest things in the nose, you get all that coconut, that cream, that vanilla, bourbon notes here and there, a lot of wood in the nose, and the palate has some richness, but it's crisp in the finish. It's silky. It's wonderful.
I mean, Founders Brewing, they step up to the plate batting 400 all the time.
Every
They
time.
may be batting 1,000. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make an analogy of a big heavy hitter. If you are a craft beer lover and have not explored Founders, you've got to. I mean, there's Double Trouble. They make, last week we did a session IPA. They make a great session IPA.
Yeah, that's right, all day IPA.
And wow, they just...
And you know, and then they have their big, you know, their barrel aged beer. So like KBS is well known, Kentucky Breakfast Stout. That's Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels. Then they have Canadian Breakfast Stout, which is their kind of entree into this maple soaked bourbon barrel aging process, where they took Imperial Stout and aged it in barrels that held both bourbon and maple syrup. They do the same with the Scotch Ale for Backwoods Bastard, aged in bourbon barrels. And then they have Curmudgeon's Better Half, which came out recently, which was Scotch Ale aged in maple-soaked bourbon barrels. So, I mean, they've got this down pat.
What would you pair this with?
This is, I mean, pretty much to me is a dessert beer. The alcohol, the intensity, the sweetness, the richness on the palate. And I love this with, you know, I'm thinking carrot cake and things like that, kind of brighter, cakey, blonde cake versions. Also works with chocolate, though. I mean, you're going to bring a vanilla quality to chocolate desserts, chocolate cake, fudge-based desserts, things like that. But then, you know, I can't get the bacon thought out of my head from before. I mean, I don't know how you work this in, but can't you see having this with like French toast or something like that? I mean, it would be amazing. I don't know if you want to pop this in the morning, but brunch. That's what brunch is for.
A late brunch.
Yeah, late
or
brunch.
Or a late morning brunch.
But I mean, this is, the maple syrup is not overwhelming in it either. That's what's so cool. It's just a touch of maple syrup. So it would work excellently with that. But I think you always want to, if you're going to do it with something like pancakes or French toast, make sure you have the savory sausage, ham, or bacon on the side, because I think the sweetness is going to balance nicely against that savory
I
quality.
mean, this is a testament that craft beer can be like a fine wine. The taste evolves as it passes
Yeah,
over
and
your
it
tongue.
definitely
It's
has a kind of
fantastic.
dessert wine
Yeah.
quality to it. And if you lay it down, it'll oxidize nicely. You'll get that kind of that golden raisin, sherry-like note. I think will be fantastic.
The sun has almost caught up with Greg. That means it's time to go. Thank you as always, Greg.
Thank you.
Everyone, please always do drink responsibly and be sure to bring your thirst next time for another Beer of the Week.